What is self-growth? What do we need to grow? And how can we sustain that growth so that it impacts us from day to day and from area of our life to the other area of our life? Self-growth is one of those topics that is seemingly easy but quite elusive to capture because it involves a whole journey of your life from birth until the day you die, because throughout your entire life you're growing. You're growing consciously or unconsciously. You're growing positively or negatively. And those are the things that we don't actually take time to understand. So the layers that you're putting on, whether they are layers of beauty, layers of warmth, layers of tones, layers of positivity, or layers of spirituality, they are things that you're piling on yourself. And those things are growing certain emotions, certain characteristics, and certain outcomes in your life. They are pushing your life in one direction or the other that is classed as growth in that area. And today I want us to really reflect on the topic of self-growth and how we can purposefully influence growth in the right areas and at the right time in our lives, so that when we take each step, it should be contributing to something that we are consciously aware of. So that every step that we take should be purposefully contributing to something that we want, something that we need, something that we are lacking in, and that we are going to somehow get the outcome of those steps that we are taking towards those growth areas. If we were to reflect on what plants need to grow, we will tell ourselves that all they need is fertile ground, sunshine, and a conducive environment. And as much as that is true, a lot of plants need much more than that to grow. Because if it was as simple as that, all farmers would be rich. There would be times when you give your plants all of those things and they still struggle because of attack from insects, because of the poor seed, and because of a whole host of other things, including weeds and just things that are unexplainable to us. So when it comes to humans and growth, you can do your own best effort. You need to understand what is impacting on you. How many of those things are within your power to change and influence? How many are within the power of the environment? How many are coming from your relationships and all the other things that are outside of your influence? And in other cases, even when all of those aspects are conducive in your opinion, you still don't seem to be growing spiritually, mentally, emotionally, in ways that you would imagine. And so growth becomes really difficult to capture. But at the same time, as individuals, we have to be able to reflect on what we need, how we can grow in those areas, and actually the fact that a lot of the things that we are doing are leading to growth in ways that we don't want in our lives. That a lot of the negative things in our lives are being sown and grown and nurtured by us in ways that we may or may not be conscious of. In my opinion, there are three major areas of growth that we as individuals need to master. Now, we can go and dwell on a lot more than three, but I think that these three will capture in general terms every other area that you can grow in. And the first one of those areas is the self. Self impacts on every other area of your life, because at the end of the day, you are the individual who seeks growth. You are the individual who is impacted by that growth. And you're the individual who must carry and manage and influence and sustain that growth in your life. And the first way to really start to do that is self-care. Look after yourself. Self-growth requires you to take care of yourself emotionally, take care of yourself mentally, spiritually, and socially. Because when that self comes together, you will be able to manage all the other areas in your life, even if life is not perfect, even if life is challenging. Relationship growth is another really significant area of your life which impacts on your overall well-being. And that relationship is very much influenced by self. Your level of self growth includes your mindset, it includes your emotional management, your overall sense of self worth, your belief in self. And when you grow in self, or you understand and own and master yourself, you bring that mastery, you bring that confidence, and you bring that self awareness into all your other external relationships. When you understand yourself and you're self accepting and self loving and self soothing, you bring those aspects of growth in self into your other external relationships. The way you deal with people, the way you understand them, the way you set your boundaries and function in all your other external social, romantic, and professional relationships is based on that growth in self, that mastery of what you're good at, what you're struggling with, being confident and accepting that you're not perfect and that's okay. You bring all of those characteristics of self ownership and self growth into external relationships. And if you struggle with that growth, if you struggle with that mastery and ownership of self, you struggle with your external relationships. And conversely, your external environment influences the self based on how well you can manage and sustain that external. Your spiritual journey is the final stage of transformation and growth and knowing and owning that we need to talk about. And just like the whole concept of growth that starts differently for everyone, spirituality comes differently to different people. Even if you're born and baptized into whatever faith and religion you practice, you find your own purpose at your own time. You find your own calling at your own pace. Spirituality is something that impacts on your relationships, and it also impacts on yourself, your treatment and acceptance and embracing of self. If you are a spiritual person, then that belief in itself influences the way you live your life, influences the way you deal with people in your relationships, and therefore overall influence on your own growth in terms of mindset and values and emotions, whether you're forgiving, whether you're not forgiving, whether you're tolerant, kind, passionate. All of those aspects of spirituality come through in your health, in your self-care, in your relationships with other people, consciously and unconsciously. And in the same way, your relationships impact on your spirituality. They all influence each other. Your spirituality contributes to your health. It contributes to the health on your relationship. And growth in this area spiritually will lead to some growth in those areas. Negative growth in those other areas will impact on negative growth in self, in relationships, and in spirituality. And so you find that when people are in pain and trauma and darkness, they don't see the value of God, especially if they sustain that pain and suffering. They start to doubt spirituality, or they start to deepen their faith. They start to connect deeper because they think this may be punishment for some crime. This may be a reason for them to elevate their faith, or this is just something that is going to pass. And that deep, firm belief in something to come at the end of that suffering keeps you going in a way that does not work in equal terms for those who do not have that deep, firm faith that there is some external force to come to the rescue. And so it's really, really important for us to be able to reflect on those things. Like, who are you in terms of yourself, your purpose, your calling, your needs, your emotions, and how do you come through in all of those areas? How does that overflow into your health? How does that overflow into your relationships? And how do those relationships and your health and individuality influence your spirituality? How do you embrace gratitude? How do you reject gratitude because you think there is nothing for you to be grateful for? And what is your role in all that? Because as much as spirituality is one of those things that you embrace to wait for a savior, to wait for a rescuer, we need to be mindful of the mindset that we embrace, where it comes from, how it impacts us, and how we can either adopt and embrace or adjust those things to be able to grow, to be able to move forward from one area to the other, from one emotion to the other, from one life issue to the other.